This is a quick update video going over some of the things I've added to the shader. So if we start up our base material again, you'll see that it's pretty similar to how it was before. And if we set up our nice ice material from last time, you'll see pretty much nothing's changed with this version. It still looks about the same, but the big sort of update to things that I've done are as follows. First off, it now supports full lighting. If we duplicate, rotate, now I've got 2 directional lights, duplicate, 3 directional lights, and all of our specular calculations are being done accurately. All the light is being added properly, all within the projection shader. There is point light support. So point lights work. If someone points a light at you or shines a light on you, you'll react realistically to it, and anything that you have in the shader will react realistically to it, just as it should be. You can see there, that's working. Spotlights are also a go. So you can see there, spotlights being added onto it, and if we change the intensity, it'll start to take over the color. So yeah, pretty standard lighting for everything, now included in a projection shader. So anything that you cover with this shader is going to get the lighting just like before. Sphere will get the lighting, and outside it'll get whatever lighting it normally has. For the object version, there are a few new options, one of which is the fade from center toggle, which will allow you to, instead of fading from a position vertically or outwards horizontally, you choose vertical mode, like so, then spreading outwards, you can check fade from center, and now a space will be created from the center of the object that is not going to have the cover on it, and this is compatible with the full world effect. So now in your full world effect, everything but you will be covered because you're being masked out by that little circle there in the center of the object. And you can fade that in just like you normally would the other fade values. Get the hardness of it just right. Yeah, so if you want like a hard edge, you can do that. And that works really well for these kinds of full world effects. So that's a new feature in this version. There's no longer a texture sample for the distortion, and the distortion will now distort both the regular texture and the normal map if you check the distort texture button. So if we set these both to 1, you'll see that nothing's going to happen because it's set to only distort our dissolve here. Let me set that up. You can see the distortion's already happening there, and the dissolve still works as it always has. So now checking the distort texture button will also distort the texture. There really aren't that many practical uses for this, but it sure is a neat, fun effect. The scale of the distortion can be changed with the scale factor, and the speed of the distortion's wave can be changed with the speed factor, just like before, but instead of having to use a texture sample, I'm just generating some simplex noise inside of this CG include and using it in my shader. And it's optimized, very fast, doesn't drop my frame rate at all with a lot of stuff going on, so it's promising in that regard. that pretty much does it, I believe, for the new features from this version of the shader. Oh, reflections are also a go. So it'll now take the reflection probe of your scene and reflect it with a standard Unity, reflection direction. And if there is no reflection probe, then you can set one that it'll use instead. So if I set one, default reflection probe there, and then I turn off my reflection probe, you can see that now it's taking the values of your baked in reflection probe. So that you always have some kind of screen space reflections going on even in worlds that don't have probes. The roughness of that can be changed here if you want really smooth reflections or really soft, shinier or more matte materials would benefit from this. Reflections are now a thing, and you won't look bad if the person doesn't have a reflection probe, which is a good thing because lots of people forget to bake those, it seems. That, I believe, does it now for all of the shader features in this one. I've redone the lighting calculation for the actual ambient light, so it no longer is just like a straight up additive light to it. It'll take the light of the scene, so you can see my light is pretty dark. So in a baked lighting environment where someone doesn't have any directional lights and they're just using the ambient light, your lighting will be equivalent to what they have set for the ambient light value. So in a world that has only baked lights, you should still be lit just fine. So most VR chat worlds should look fine with this effect. And the fake light direction is now implemented, so if there is no directional light active in a scene, it will fake a direction so that the specular reflections and regular reflections still appear, at least, to be mapped correctly. Those are just standard character shader features that I've implemented into this projection shader. Yeah, everything works very well. The big sort of exciting thing, depending on how you look at it, is that there is now a variant for particles. This will track the position of the particle. As you can see, moving it up and down moves the texture, and it's mapped in a triplanar fashion just like before. There are a few unique settings to this particle version, and a few settings that are missing because of the nature of particles. So first things first, you want the particle to be pretty big. It needs to be big enough that you're not going to clip out of its view at all, similar to if you were doing a full world effect with the other shader. Well, there's no like shape masking. You can still mask it out into patterns, but for the best use, they should be full texture patterns, like a noise pattern would work pretty well with this. Things that are cut out, like these shapes, probably not so much, because of the nature of trying to get the position of particles. But stuff like that, you know, um, these kinds of things, these work fine and look really good. So let's set up my basic material again, just like I had it before, and you'll see that all of the lighting and everything is identical. The difference is that now it can be put on a particle and I suppose shot around if you are into that kind of thing. Shoot and roll particles. There you go. See, changing the normal value reduces the normal value like it should. The lighting and all of its components are contained within just the particle bounds, and moving the particle around, you'll see that it all works beautifully. The sort of drawback to this is mitigated by a couple more sliders that I've added. The coverage range and range edge fade. So the range is just a float value. It will extend infinitely into a full world effect, so anyone that's inside of the mesh particle bounds will see the maximum range. So let's bring that back to where we can see it again. And the range edge fade is a value that determines the edge of this range here, which is perfectly circular, how much it should fade into the center with alpha. So if you want a nice smooth creep effect, that is not possible with this. And if you'd like to shoot particles that maybe have a little bit of fade to them, that is how you would accomplish this. Things that are missing, directional dissolves are missing because I needed to get the object position for its orientation in the world, and I can't do that with a particle, at least not yet, to the best of my knowledge. I'm just not good enough yet. The normal features are all in here. All the lighting stuff is still in here. These are the only two additional features, I believe. All the triplanar stuff is still there. Normal stuff still works. Everything still works exactly like it should, but it's on a particle instead. The dissolve still works, and it works in both modes still. So changing the dissolution down and then setting it to object. It moves with the object like it should, and then changing it to world no longer moves it with the object like it should. So all of that stuff still working very well. Nothing is wrong with these features. It's just the object position, like directional stuff, that's broken at the moment. Distort works exactly like it should in world space or in object space. So yeah, now there's a particle variant, and the package that this shader comes in also contains the noise CG include, the particle specific CG include, and both the regular and particle shader. Those can be found in .raro. The top one here, LitProjectiveDissolve, is the one meant for objects, and then in the particle section is the one meant for particles. And I can change the name of that to say particle as well, just to make it easier. That's pretty much all of the additional features that have been added. I've been working on it for the better part of my time online, so I'm pretty happy with the progress I've made so far. Once again, if you would like to get hold of me to ask about this shader or acquire this shader, contact me on Discord and we can set something up, as it is pretty much a release candidate at this point because I have everything working. We can discuss pricing if that's an issue, so don't worry about that. Hope to hear from you soon.